Hey, Southeast Missouri sports fans. Enjoy the show and want to take it on the go? You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. Tune in as they air by searching SEMO Sports Zone wherever you may be listening. Welcome to the SEMO Sports Zone presented by A-Corp Sports. This is the end of week 5 already.
It's flying by.
All right. I'm here with my co-host Dave. David, how are we doing today?
Drying off. Wet weekend. A lot of good football games, but a lot of wet ones. That was a interesting weekend to say the least, with reschedules and just sloppy games that just rained through the entire thing. It was an interesting weekend. Yeah,
Mother Nature does not care about your football schedule.
No, they do not.
It was an interesting one though. A lot of games. I don't know how much the weather affected them. I'd assume a lot. I don't know if you noticed, but Friday night the passing game was non-existent.
Yeah, and even yesterday, for the game I was at, it rained pretty much through the entire game at New Madrid. I saw the Dexter game, and it looked like you guys had pretty good weather for that one, but it rained pretty much the entire game in New Madrid. So, I mean, it pretty much took away the passing games in that game as well. So, it impacted most. I would say most of the passing games most of the passing numbers took a hit this week with the hurricane coming through.
So I don't know how you really tally up some of the wins and losses in this. I mean, a win's wins and a loss is a loss, but you got to account for the weather now.
Yeah, you got to adjust. If you're a team, they're the teams that could make the adjustments and kind of change their offense definitely had the advantage. If you're solely a passing team, that really depends on that a lot. You were behind the 8 ball before you even took the field. It was just tough weather conditions all week for the for the games, and some of them were postponed. I still don't understand postponing a game because of rain, but it's whatever. If you can play it in better conditions, that's fine. But yeah, it definitely made an impact in a lot of these games.
As a personal anecdote, as somebody who does production for these games, being told we're postponing the game for rain, kind of a godsend for us.
Yeah, it was nice because it made for both of our games that we were doing on Friday night got moved to Saturday, so it gave me a chance to watch a lot of other games on Friday night and have several screens going at the same time to watch as much as I can. But so it does offer that, so I do like that for sure.
Let's just start getting into it. First game that I've got on my listing was Sikeston at Farmington. Ended that game 6:45.
Yeah, Farmington's just better. I mean, not much you can say about that. They've got better players. The rain played into their hands because they're a running football team. Still sloppy first half for both teams, trying to handle the ball and everything. But Farmington, they were kind of in their element, so they were able just to run the ball and pretty much run it at will. Sikeston kind of struggled a little bit, but that was expected against the Farmington. I think anybody really expected Sikeston to win that game, and Sikeston just it was just kind of what was expected that game.
Yeah, Sikeston entering into this 2-3 zone for their wins and losses it's expected, but it's kind of harsh in a way too. I'm sure there's still winnable games on their season, but that was one they were definitely not really favored in. Yeah,
the SEMO North is just, those teams are just too good for Sikeston to where Sikeston is right now. I mean, Sikeston will get there, but right now they're not. They just don't match up well with those teams, and I don't think they're as physical. They're not as fast, and they just don't have as many good players.
Moving down south, Scott City at Malden.
That game, I didn't get any eyes on. I never saw anything on that other than what I read. I know that Underwood ran for over 300 yards. That seems like a good game for him. I mean, anytime you run for over 300 yards and like 340 and 4 touchdowns, that's a pretty good night. But it seemed like it was a very slow start. I think it was 14-0 at half. Kind of one of those games where it's just kind of hard to get going. I'm sure there were probably some turnovers there. And Scott City likes to throw the ball too, so they were, they were looked pretty much like they were one dimensional. And Malden, we know Malden just likes to drop back and chuck it deep, and so it really put a kink into their plans, I'm sure, with the rain and stuff.
Yeah, Scott City. I mean, that run game when they're forced to use it, Underwood is such a key talent for them. So, as much as they might have been somewhat out of their element because of the weather and the lack of passing, I think they probably had it cinched together regardless.
Yeah, they could kind of take it easy in that one. I think, it seemed like up 14-0, and Malden cut it to 14-6 early in the third quarter, but then just a heavy dose of Underwood there in the second half. Just run him, use your offensive line to open up the big holes, and it seems like it's kind of what they did.
I mean, it's for us, it's the kind of the tale of the week every week is that Malden takes a loss, but they get some good hits in, I guess. They always end up with points on the board, which is more than you can say for some teams.
They've got some athletes out there, and it's just finding a line around them to get them where they can get out in space, and just kind of finding that offense that suits them the best. And again, new coach, you're in a long losing streak here, and it's hard to get that first win. So Malden. We keep seeing positives. They didn't get there was no turbo clock this week. They were in the game early in the third quarter. Same as against Sykes, and they were in the game early in the third quarter. Now you just got to build on that and just keep building on it and get there. So hopefully that Malden will get a win this year. But they're improving.
It's a game of inches in both the actual standpoint of the game and from the mentality standpoint of you got to take those wins where you can get them and build off that. So I think in the future, Malden's going to be a competitive football team again. Next up, Poplar Bluff at Jackson, 9:57. This game went kind of how I expected it to. Score was a little more lopsided than I was thinking, but
yeah, it was a close game really in the first half. I think it was 23-7 at half, and then I think Jackson scored right before the half to go up that. But then things just fell apart for Poplar Bluff early in that third quarter. I think 4 straight possessions with turnovers. Jackson turned those into points, and the game was just in the snap of a finger a blowout because we know Jackson can score. Mm-hmm. I was impressed with their defense. Their defense I thought was a lot better. How much the rain played into that, because Poplar Bluff does like to throw the ball, and they weren't able to really do much passing on the night. I don't know how much that played into it, but Jackson tackled better. They just look better, defensively, and Jalen Hampton on offense. He's tough. They just pretty much they were able to stick to the ground game, and Jalen Hampton looked really good. I think he had 5 touchdowns, 191 yards or something. He looked really good, and but they can score. But the key is for them, this week coming up will be their defense, and their defense looks like they got a lot better. Yeah,
Jackson has the ability to just ramp up their offense whenever they want to, and they really keyed in on Poplar Bluff this week. Yeah, like you said, looking forward, that's going to be – I don't know how that's going to compare with Cape Central, because we'll talk about this game next. St. Dominic at Cape Central, 0-47. I mean, Cape dominated this game every side of the ball. There was nothing they did wrong at all.
They're a wagon. They just continue to roll on and roll over everybody. Another good defensive performance. Coach Gibbs, I think it's his 200th win. But they just dominated. And St. Dominic was a good team. They're 3-1 from coming down from St. Louis. And, I don't think that, I think everybody thought that St. Dominic would be able to play with Cape, but Cape just blew them out from the jump. I think it's the second game out of their last 3 that they've scored on the very first play from scrimmage, something like that. I mean, they're Cape Central. I mean, they're good. They're very good.
And the narrative that you haven't played any hard games, I think that's out the window now. Just because like you said, this was a team that everybody thought that Cape Central was not going to struggle with, but at least play a full game with. And on the broadcast, I mean, you got St. Dominic just happy they got a first down. And so I think going into next week, especially, that's going to be telling for Cape Central that they're taking this win. I would not let that overtake your ability to play Jackson. You still have to know that that's Jackson. That is the biggest juggernaut on your schedule right now. But looking forward, I mean, hey, Cape Central looks great. They're 5-0. One of the only 2 5-0 teams on this listing for us, but they just looked awesome.
Yeah, their defense is so good. I mean, I know everybody talks about their Thunder Lightning, running back duo back there, but man, their defense is good. It just smothers other teams, and they just cannot get first downs. It's just a struggle, and they're very fun to watch.
Moving on to probably one of the most competitive games, Portageville at Charleston, ended that game 21-34. I don't really know what to say about it, though, because it just kind of seemed like it was more in the stage of Portageville just making error after error, which I don't know how much the rain played into that, but you have 6 fumbles during this game. Yeah. That's hard.
Poor tackling, a lot of turnovers. They couldn't really throw the ball. I think they only attempted one pass the entire night. They were kind of, they just could not get anything going their way. And Charleston hit some big plays on them. There was some, they hit, Clark had a big run. Kimball had a big run. They just hit some big plays, and, Portageville just never could recover. They got back in the game. I think I want to say it was like 18-12 or something like that. It was, they got back in the game. It looks like, hey, we have a chance, but they couldn't get a stop. Charleston scores, and the game was pretty much over because Portageville just never really showed the ability to get the big play themselves, and I just thought that they just did not play well in that game, and whether it's the weather taking them out of their game plan a little bit or what, but Charleston just was fired up and ready to play, and Charleston can hit some big plays on you, and they look good.
Well, I was going to ask, do you think it's more that Portageville had a down game, or have we just been sleeping on Charleston?
I think a little bit of both. I jumped on Charleston early this year, said I think they're going to be better than what people think. I still thought Portageville would win this game, but Charleston, they didn't even blink. I mean, they came out and they played hard. They were, they're better than what I even thought they were going to be. They just have some big play potential that at any point in time, if you cannot take a play off against them, and there's a few times that some missed tackles led to some really big gains, and that just kind of sunk Portageville. And again, I think Portageville just did not play well. But that happens. These are 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, and you're playing in the rain. You're, who knows what's going on, in their heads. Maybe they don't want to be there. Some kids love playing in it, some kids don't. It just, it didn't seem like they were clicking all night long in that game.
Yeah, and that just happens. You kind of have to take that on the chin of just, you're 3-2. It's not a losing season yet at all, and you definitely have winnable games on going forward. Portageville's going back home next week, so that's where they perform their best too. So we'll just have to see how that pans out. Game that you attended, Kelly at New Madrid, ended that game 14-47. Tell me about that.
New Madrid just dominated the game, start to finish. They finally looked like what we kind of thought they might look like. They're finally playing a team that's not, undefeated, and they played a tough schedule with Cape Central and Dexter, who are both state ranked and highly state ranked, and then a Herman team that's undefeated on a 4-hour road trip. They should have beat East Prairie and had their chances and just kind of messed up there, but they just came out and just dominated the game against Kelly. They only attempted one pass. They just kept it on the ground. Charlie Rosano, I think he had about 160 yards, 3 touchdowns. They ran about 5 or 6 plays. That's all they had to do. They dominated the line of scrimmage. Kelly has a good player in Skylar Still, and the defense just kind of kept him under wraps, and that's about all Kelly has. They weren't able to throw the ball. Kelly wasn't, so they couldn't get the balls out to their receivers, and they just didn't have a great running game other than Still, and they kind of bottled him up, and so New Madrid just pretty much dominated the game start to finish. And I think this is a first of several wins in a row for New Madrid. They've got a pretty good schedule, ahead with some very winnable games. So New Madrid could get on a little roll here going into districts.
Well, we mentioned last week too, I think the importance of getting your first win in the season really not sets that tone, but really kind of brings it to the apex of where it should be. Like you said, if New Madrid starts rolling, there's no reason to be surprised about that. They've been playing against very good teams, which I would say probably have toughened them up. Other than their fundamentals, like just needing to be tuned, you've been playing just excruciating games against top tier opponents. So now going forward, your schedule's very winnable.
Yeah, it's amazing when you run your jet sweep to Jaquan Jones. When the difference is when you run it against Dexter and Cape Central as opposed to Kelly. Kelly, that's wide open, and you get a 60-yard touchdown run or whatever. You break it off against Dexter, it's a 5-yard loss. It's just the line play is just a huge difference. And a lot of the stuff that they were trying against Cape Central and Herman and Dexter, wasn't working. But it's working. It'll work against some of these teams they have on their schedule now. They're going to be able to use their speed to get outside, and their offensive line is doing a better job. They're New Madrid's a young team. They're getting better, and they're going to be a team that's going to you're going to have to deal with in the next few years. But they're getting better this year, and I think they've got several wins coming up here on their schedule.
Moving on, Kennett at East Prairie 0-52.
I don't know if weather conditions can be any more perfect for a team than they were for East Prairie. I just feel like that is the kind of game that East Prairie just smiles and says, yeah, this is what we want. And they just line up and ground and pound you all day and just roll over you. And they just rolled over Kennett. Kennett struggles on offense as it is, and you throw in rain and wet conditions, it makes it tough. But I don't know. I just feel like East Prairie just thrives in those kind of conditions. And they did. Yesterday they were just a perfect situation for them.
Yeah. This is where Ian Penrod's ground and pound offense just really comes to shine. From what I saw of that game, East Prairie never looked like they struggled at all. It just looked like whatever they're doing, no matter where they're at in the field, it's like, we'll push for that first down. There's no problem with that.
Yeah, they just, again, they just said, yeah, we got this one. And Kennett just couldn't do anything with them. And it's a struggle right now for Kennett, a real struggle. But yeah, East Prairie, they're like, yeah, could we have this weather every week?
Yeah, no. And it's exciting to see East Prairie get these wins. They always love getting wins like this. And, coming off of that loss against Dexter, too, like a win for them right now, it doesn't mean everything, but it just shows that, like, hey, we're still competitive in the area.
Yeah, and I thought they played well against Dexter, honestly.
Dexter thought they played well against Dexter.
Yeah, I thought even though they lost, kind of got a little out of hand late, but I thought East Prairie played very well against Dexter. Had a great game plan and looked good, and that game plan is going to work against a lot of teams. I mean, Dexter is very good this year, but yeah, I think that game plan works against anybody else in the area that they're going to play. So, and it worked for sure yesterday.
And we mentioned too, like I said, Ian Penrod, like this is his specialty, is that ground and pound, and if he's building up that offense now, and they're doing this now when he's fresh and his team's fresh to him, I can't even imagine what that's going to look like in a couple of years when you have that foundation completely built out.
Yeah, if it's like it was at Portersville, he gets them in the weight room, gets them, and he's a big believer in that, from what I understand, and gets them out there and gets them stronger and everything. So they're only going to get better at this kind of offense, and it's a perfect offense for East Prairie. I've always said that East Prairie is one of those teams that you want to run like the wing tee or some sort of option. Just a ground oriented game, because they always seem to have that type of team that can just grind it out. And if you can find the right players and the right coach, then you can have a lot of success. And I think they've got a lot of success in their future there with him.
No, exciting to see. Moving on, you told me you have a story about this. Principia at Chaffee, 14-6.
Yeah, for some reason, I watched the entire second half of this game on their huddle feed. I don't know what got me to do this, but it was a close game. It was 14-0 at half. Chaffee scored early in the third quarter to cut it to 14-6. Had the ball in the fourth quarter. They have the ball on their own 35-yard line, or so, and decide instead of kicking a punt or punting, they're going to kick a field goal on their own 35. I've never seen that before. I don't know why you'd want to do that. Delay a game penalty. They move them back to like their own 32, I think is what they were. So they try.
And that's where you change up and you kick a punt, because
they line up for the field goal again and kick a field goal. The ball goes to the 50-yard line, and they gave them Principia the ball at the 50-yard line. Number one, I've never seen that before in my life. A team, an NFL kicker is not going to kick the ball from the 32, your own 32 for a field goal, and then they took over at the 50 instead of where the field goal was attempted. I don't understand. Maybe there's an official that's listening, or somebody from Chaffee or something that could let us know. With the huddle feed, you don't have any announcing. I just know it was fourth and about 15. I went back and watched it a second time just to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. But it's just the rarest thing. I've been watching football since 1981. I went to my first game. I've never seen that. I don't understand why. And I'm like, if you try a field goal, I've always assumed that you get the ball from the spot where you try the field goal, unless it's inside the 20. And instead, they gave them the ball where the ball landed.
See, I don't know what the Missouri high school ruling is on that.
I don't know if it's something different or something that I'm missing, or if they just messed up the call because they've never seen it before, or what. I don't know. I know Principia even called a timeout after they lined up for the field goal, got the delay game call. Principia calls a timeout and puts two guys back so they can return it, and it wasn't returnable. It went to the 50-yard line. They marked it at the 50 and gave Principia the ball there. I don't. It's just a strange sequence there, and I don't understand it. I don't. But if there's an official or somebody from Chaffee who could help us out on that, I would love to know, because I've never seen that before. Why would you try a field goal there and not? I mean, maybe they do field goals better than punting. I don't know, but it just seems strange that happened. And as far as the game goes, I thought Chaffee, it was just a really sloppy game, really windy there. You could just hear the wind whipping through the huddle feed.
Well, maybe they thought the wind was going to carry the ball towards the field goal.
Maybe, but I mean, that's still I'm like, I don't think an NFL kicker is going to try that. But yeah, I mean, Chaffee played, it was a good matchup of two equally matched teams, in my opinion. They just weren't able to get that second score there in the second half. But yeah, that was just a strange situation that I've not seen. I don't know the thoughts behind it from Coach Aldermont, and I don't know, and Chaffee, and I don't know. I don't know the ruling there. Why they gave them the ball at the 50?
The only thing I could think of is that it was, and I don't know. It just sounds like it's like, well, maybe they just ruled it as a punt itself, but I don't know how that return works then. Yeah,
that's what I mean. It wasn't touched, maybe because it wasn't touched by the other. I mean, I don't know. I just always thought if you're attempting a field goal, you're in field goal formation, you miss a field goal, you get the ball at that spot of the field goal. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if these officials were just maybe confused too and just said, oh, well, here, we're just giving it to them at the fit. I don't know. Well,
yeah, because it sounds like to me that it's like, okay, we switched to a punt and we just ruled it as a fair catch.
Yeah, or maybe there's a high school rule that's different than a. But I've just never seen that before. So it was just curious to me, and I just thought it was a funny thing. I went back and watched it, like I said, again this morning, just make sure that is what I saw, and it was. And yeah, it was just a strange situation.
Interesting. Moving on, St. Vincent at Hayti. I watched a little bit of this game. I watched about to the half because Hayti was keeping up with St. Vincent pretty well. Then I was kind of switching to other games just to check and make sure what else was happening. And then when I came back, it was just, St. Vincent, much like always, they're just kind of inevitable in scoring points on you.
Yeah, they wake up in the first half, they may put some of these games away, and then you can rest your starters in the second half. But it was a 0-0 game at halftime. They just neither team could get much going. But St. Vincent in the second half, they just took advantage of some mistakes and some turnovers, and they just opened it up. And they're a really good football team. They just kind of just shut Hayti down. Hayti wasn't able to do much, Hayti, we know what they can do when they can get free on offense, and they just could not get to the edges. I thought the line just really struggled against that St. Vincent defensive line, and just a really nice job by St. Vincent, especially there in the second half, just kind of putting it away. Kind of woke up a little bit and put the game away pretty quick.
Yeah, that's what they're good at this point. I mean, every time I think you can count St. Vincent out at all, they always surprise me. Well, and they shouldn't. At this point, they should not surprise me. But in some ways, it's always just like, oh, well, maybe they finally lost their edge. But they, like you said, they always come back in the second half.
They are just a team that just doesn't wake up till halftime. He must give some great halftime speeches because they come out and play really well in the second half every week.
Moving on, this was kind of a heartbreaker game for me. Crothersville at Valley Catholic. I don't know how much the weather put into this, but that game ended 7:37.
What was what's the quote from Dennis Green? They are what we thought they were, and that's Valley. Valley lost to St. Vincent, but man, they were just beating everybody else, and that Valley is what we think they are. The Valley is they're just a very, very good football team. Crothersville went up there and they just didn't have any luck. I think it was 37-0 before they scored. I mean, it was tough. Reality kind of hit. I know that they couldn't throw the ball very well. Through a pick six, I saw that. But Valley Catholic, they're just dominant. They're just good in any kind of weather. They're just a solid football team, and they're going to be tough to beat in that Class 2 District 1.
Yeah. When I was watching the live stream, somebody commented, they're just like, is this a group of D1 athletes? Because they look like a college team.
Yeah, and they're just so solid fundamentally, just so solid. And every year they are. They just do they do a really good job up there with that program, and every year is just But the funny thing is, they've not won a district in quite a while with the multiplier and everything that they're faced with. But I think they're in pretty good in a pretty good situation to maybe win one this year, because I thought Crothersville was going to be their toughest opponent, and maybe if this game is on in different kind of conditions. It's a different type of game, but I don't know. That's a 30-point win, and you wouldn't think the weather would make 30 points of difference. And I don't know. I think Crowsville, I think they see what they need to improve on and what they need to do. They know where they need to get to if they want to win that district. And Valley, boy, they're just tough. They're just tough every year.
Yeah, for Crothersville, this was like their biggest game because the rest of the competition in their district is it's not a clean sweep, but Crothersville can win all those games. This was honestly one of their biggest tests, and like you said, that's a 30-point game regardless of weather conditions. That's a hard loss for them, but they're still a fundamentally solid team. And if this is your biggest loss of the season, I don't want to say it's expected, but everybody knows how good Valley is.
Right, and we could very well be seeing this game in November again. Mm-hmm. The problem is you lose to Valley here, you've got to go back up there probably if you have this game again. So it's tough because it kind of puts you behind the 8 ball. But again, you know what you need. You're like, look, okay, this is who we're going to have to beat. We're going to have to get better to beat this team. So I think that's very, I think they're going to be able to use that as some motivation. But I think it was kind of a measuring stick game for Crothersville to see how far along they came, and they didn't really measure up. So you got a lot of improvements that you can make in the next 5, 6, 7 weeks before you play that game. So and Crothersville they have some good players and I think the good coaching staff they'll be okay. You got to get better and see if you can close that gap some.
Yeah, for Crothersville, you got to just think being 5-0. That looks awesome. Being 4-1 and learning from that one, that's more important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to the game, I attended Southern Boone at Dexter, 21-24. This was really fun for me. I was taking pictures, so I was on the sideline. I got to hear the perspective from both coaches, from players, and overall, it was really smash mouth defensive oriented football. Kind of felt like I was watching a Big Ten game.
Yeah, I really felt like Dexter dominated this game, quite honestly. I thought they moved the ball well. I thought they had some turnovers that cost them points, and it could have cost them the game, honestly. But I thought they moved the ball very well. The first half, Southern Boone was putting 8 in the box, really kind of stifling the run. And second half, Jet Grams looked angry, mm-hmm. to say it nicely. He just seemed like he was just not going to be denied in the second half. And I thought the offensive line for Dexter played better in the second half, and I thought they were able to move the ball, the way they wanted to in the second half. Defensively, they kind of got caught on the big long touchdown in the first half, and then the second half, they're going to give up. Southern Boone's a good team. They've got a really good quarterback. He's a really tough guy and, tough to stop. I thought Dexter's defense did a nice job on him. But I really thought Dexter could have won this game by a little more, honestly, if they wouldn't have had the turnovers. And that's something that they need to clean up. But I thought Dexter looked really good. They came out with both teams came out with a lot of intensity. It was a hard-hitting game, real physical. And like you said, kind of like a Big Ten game. It was a really, really fun game to watch.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. We consider this kind of a game that the first team that blinks is the one that is going to take control. And it's kind of validating from my perspective of getting 3 points on the board is important. And what I never expected was in the first half for Dexter to kick a field goal. And that 3 points is what separated and won the game.
Right.
And so I'm not going to tell every team to go out and start focus on kicking more. I think you should, but it kind of feels nice to be validated a little bit in that, hey, get those 3 points. Sometimes they really matter.
Absolutely. And, then he hit every point after as well. Mm-hmm. And, those are key points in games. And, because you're not going to be able to score a touchdown every time you're in the red zone. And so that was it's good to get points. You always you want points when you can. You want touchdowns, obviously. But if you can get a field goal and get 3 points, sometimes later in the game it's going to benefit. And Dexter proved that and proved to your point. But yeah, Dexter, they kind of stubbed their toe a little bit with some penalties and some turnovers there in the red zone. But I thought they moved the ball really well, up and down the field against the Southern Boone defense, which is really good. And that was good to see. Even when Jet Grams was struggling, and I think he had negative yards in the first half, Dexter was still able to move the ball some. They just couldn't just couldn't make the big play when they needed to. Then, of course, the second half, his run that he had to start that second half, that was extremely impressive. That's one of the better runs you're going to see a high school kid make, and just an angry run, just throwing people off of him, dragging people, just a very impressive run. And I think once that happened, that kind of the whole team just fed off that, and they were going to be a tough team to beat in the second half after that happened.
Yeah, you can definitely tell it was a tale of two halves, just because like when I was on the sideline and once the clock ran down in the first half, you could tell just kind of like not the inherent disappointment of Dexter's side, but the kind of down mentality they had. And I heard it right before they went into the locker room. I don't even know which player said it, but he just said, "Hey guys, we get the ball second half. We got this." And you could just kind of tell like, okay, we'll make that adjustment. And Dexter did, obviously.
Right. And watching the game, I didn't feel like Dexter was outplayed that first half. I just felt like, they had a couple things that didn't go their way. You go in, you clean it up, and you make some adjustments, and they did. And then you come out in the second half and just continue to do what you've been doing. They didn't play well in the first half against East Prairie the week before. And so you kind of already had that knowledge of, hey, we can play better in the second half. So, you kind of learned that you could do that, and they did. And that's that's just what a good football team does. And a good football team has to win these kind of close games against other good football teams, and Dexter did that. And I think Dexter proved a lot of people this week. We still have Park Hills coming up in a few weeks, which is going to be another tough game like that. Scott City, and the week after that is going to be a tough one as well. Scott City can play really well, but Dexter, they've proved they're one of the best teams in the area and one of the top teams in Class 3, and they just need to continue to improve and get better and learn from the mistakes that they made yesterday and get just get better.
Yeah, I think just overall for Dexter, if you can clean up some of those mistakes on offense, your defense can carry. Like, they just played such a constrictor defense in that second half, and I could tell like once that clock was ticking down, it goes from a situation of just like, see those third down conversions from Southern Boone, fourth down conversions, everything they got is like, okay, they led to a first down, but you could see the inevitable coming is like, they're just burning clock over and over and over. And I knew it was going to come down to an onside kick. That's how these high school games go.
Yeah. And Dexter, work on that.
Yeah.
That was scary. That you work on fielding those onside kicks, because that could have went
that was nerve-wracking
south quickly. But yeah, that was very fortunate that ball went out of bounds. But yeah, Dexter, I was impressed with their defense, because that's a good Southern Boone team. Their quarterback is really good. He's kind of a dual threat guy that can run and throw. And I will say Southern Boone threw the ball more than what I had seen them do in other games I'd watched. And from what I'd seen, they were really throwing the football a lot more. And that's probably due to Dexter's defense shutting down the run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was interesting, because you're right. Number 9 for Southern Boone can throw bombs down the field. We saw that. Mostly everything he got was either broken up or a little bit overthrown. But when you could see him scramble and just rush out of the pocket, it was always interesting to see, because Dexter usually had him on lock, but he could pick up those 5 yards that he needed.
Yeah, big, strong kid, just strong.
And it kind of was, Jackson Howard's that same kind of archetype. I just think, I've said this before, is that once the pocket kind of collapses around him, he seems to get a little more frazzled. His throws aren't as accurate, and that led to a turnover in the first half. And there were some times where it's just like, there's no reason to throw here. Just run the ball. It's like, you're not going to get all the yards that you're wanting, but you're going to get enough to like maybe push that 2nd and 5 to a first down, your next play. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's just something they need to start keying into and tune up a little bit.
Yeah, and that's something I'm sure they're working on in practice with him. He's a good quarterback, but they're going to make mistakes. They're kids, and the pocket breaks down. You've got to make good decisions. But yeah, I'm very impressed with the Dexter defensive backs. They do such a good job just in man-to-man. They really do a good job against pretty much everybody I've seen them against this year. They can lock down anybody. Like I said, the one big play that they got in the first half that kind of just looked like you beat the guy on the outside, and then there was no safety help back there to help chase him down. It was just a great play call and caught Dexter a little bit. it's going to happen. It's football. It's going to happen, especially when you got two good teams playing against each other. But I thought Dexter played really well defensively, even though they gave up 21 points. I thought they played well, and they just need to continue that. In these games coming ahead, because Park Hills they can run and throw a little bit, and they're going to be tough to defend as well. So.
Yeah, that's an exciting game to think about. It's exciting to see what Dexter's postseason might actually end up being too. Coach Jamerson, he's doing a lot of things with that program, and it's looking really good for his third year in. He's succeeding.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of young players that are playing too. Some sophomores and juniors that are getting some big time, making some big time plays for them. And so, not just are they good for, it looks like they're good for this year. It looks like they're going to be, good for the next few years coming along. So
exciting to see. Let's move on to our power rankings. Mine have shifted a bit. A lot of the same teams still in that kind of 5 to 10 slot, but a little bit of shifting around. Starting off with my number 1, 2, and 3 are all the same as they were last week. It's Cape Central, Jackson, Dexter.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
kind of a lock.
I think they're pretty slotted in there right now. Mm-hmm. We may have a switch this next week coming up, but for right now, I think that's your clear 1, 2, 3.
Moving on to 4, I have Crothersville at my 4 still.
I do too.
I was debating that one though.
Well, we're going to find out this week, for me anyway, if Crothersville stays at 4. I mean, I've got them at 4 this week just because I'm like, do I think another one of these teams is going to beat them? I don't know. But I put Crothersville at 4. They've had a good season. They've Valley's a tough team. You went up there and you took it on the chin at their place in a monsoon. The other teams necessarily behind them weren't that impressive either. So, I went ahead and kept them there.
My number 5, I have taken Charleston.
I went with Scott City. They got the win over Malden. They had the good win over Portersville the week before, although Portersville kind of slides a little bit in my eyes after losing to Charleston. But I still think Scott City's a really good football team. They only have that loss to Hayti, and they admittedly didn't play well, didn't really show up for that game. I'm still putting them at 5. Again, it's once you get after the top 3, you could really kind of mix and match.
Yeah, Scott City's my number 6, kind of for the reasons you said. Their loss against Hayti, I mean, they said it themselves at Porterville. It's like we didn't show up for that game. A lot of people were upset that we didn't show up for that game. So their win against Porterville made more sense to me, as close as that game ended up being. My number 7 is Hayti.
Yeah, my number 6 is East Prairie. I've got them. I think they're a good football team. I really do. I think they could beat a lot of these teams on the list. I got them on my 6, and my 7, I have Charleston.
Okay. I completely see where you're coming from, because I hit that point where I was like hitting my 8, 9, and 10. I was just like, well, shoot, East Prairie's kind of rolling right now in a way. So I've taken East Prairie for my number 8.
And my number 8 is Hayti. So we have the same top 8. It's just kind of just flipped. And again, I don't have any issue with where you've got them slotted either. It could be any. I mean, really. I mean, they could just mix and match at this point.
It's week by week, and right. I know that's how power rankings work. But it's still it's very much a who's got the edge over somebody else. I mean, I don't know how many plays are they going to play this week.
Yeah.
My number 9 is Portageville.
My number 9 is Portageville as well. They slide, but they don't slide out yet. They need a good performance coming up this week, though, because these last 2 games have not been what we saw from the first 3 from Portageville. They're going back home, kind of a get right game for them. So we'll see. Yeah,
that's kind of a harsh thing to deal with. Is I was so high on Portageville that I kept them my number 4 for a long time, just because of that 3-0 lead they had over everybody. But now that they've dropped to 3-2, yeah, they're starting to blend in with the pack. But I think they can still break out and move back up. It's just, you have to win these games.
Right.
Every game now is becoming a must-win in that sense. My number 10, I've taken New Madrid.
Yeah, same here.
Just because of that win over Kelly.
Yeah, win over Kelly, because I had Kelly as my 10 last week. But I thought New Madrid would win the game. And it's kind of one of those prove-it-to-me games, and they did. And I think New Madrid is about ready to make a climb up this list. I think from what I saw, they've really cleaned up some of their mistakes that they are making. But just, if they don't, they still had 12 penalties, I think. I mean, there are way too many penalties. But if you can clean up those penalties, it looks like you've cleaned up your turnovers. It looks like you've cleaned up your special teams mistakes that you were making earlier in the year. your guys are starting to mature and get better. I'm like, I think they can really kind of make a run up this list and really be a tough out for a lot of teams here coming up.
I don't doubt it. New Madrid's, I mean, even a couple years ago, New Madrid was pretty dominant in their performance, which they've lost those key pieces, but I don't think they've lost their mentality at all. I mean, they still have the same coaching staff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's from what you told me about like their fundamental mistakes, things that I've seen, the fact that they don't have a long snapper, which to me seems crazy, but pushing ahead, playing the games they do, they definitely have the ability to win all these games in their season now.
Yeah, and like I said, they're young, so they're shoring up a lot of these mistakes, getting them fixed. And like I said, they looked so much better yesterday than they looked in week 1, 2, and 3. They're just and they look better against Herman than they did. They're getting better each and every week. You can't ask for more than that if you have a young football team like they have. Again, I think they're about ready to go on a run here and get some wins and really kind of move up in our rankings.
Moving on to looking next week at what games we have, I'm starting with Dexter at Kelly. Coming off of this win for Dexter, I'm not going to say this is a gimme game. And from Coach Jamerson's post-game speech to his kids, he didn't make it sound like a gimme game either. He said, keep your heads on straight. Kelly's up next. Don't be satisfied with 5-0.
It's a gimme game. I saw Kelly play. I just don't see how they match up well. I do think Dexter will start slow in this game. It's just common. You just coming off a huge game against Southern Boone, where 2 state-ranked teams. I just don't think that they're going to come out with that same kind of intensity. It's hard to do that each week. I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll kind of start slow. But they just have better players and a better line than what Kelly has. They will fight hard to the end. They are a well-coached team, but Dexter's Jimmies are better than Kelly's Joes, and I think they win this game.
Totally fair. I agree. I've just seen what Dexter's players can do, and they've finally hit that point where it's all working for them, and they gel well, and their offense just makes sense. And I think around here, that's having an offense that has more than one offensive weapon, because Kelly's got Skylar Stills, and then Dexter's got Jet Grahams, Nolan Alford, all their weapons, and they all work, and you all know where they're going to fit in, and they don't have to run one play. They can run several plays, and they can figure you out just through that.
Yeah, I really feel like Kelly's going to really struggle against that Dexter defense, because Skylar Still, he's a good player, a really good player, but he's got to have some protection and have some help. And New Madrid's line kind of blew them up a little bit, and Dexter's is much better than New Madrid. So I think he's going to be under duress the entire game. He's going to be running a lot. He's going to have to make some. If Kelly were to win this game, he's going to have to have the game of his life. And I just don't know if Kelly has the horses to win this game. I like Kelly. I like they're a well-coached team, and they play hard start to finish. I just don't think they have enough to beat Dexter.
Yeah. Dexter right now is just in another league than everybody else. And, don't be upset about that. You play your game. Absolutely. But moving on, Poplar Bluff at Sykeston. I'm going to take Poplar Bluff for this game. Yeah.
Poplar Bluff, it's Sykeston's homecoming. It'll be their, they have the big tailgate before the game. They're going to be all fired up. I think Sykeston can stay in this game. I think they can make a game of it. I don't think they have enough to win it. I would love to see it. I just don't think they do, though. I think Poplar Bluff probably has just a little bit too much. Again, I think it's closer than what people think. I really do. I think Sykeston's going to be ready to play. They're going to be fired up, being homecoming. Lot of activities, stuff going on all week. I think Sykeston's going to be ready to go, but I think Poplar Bluff essentially pulls it out in the end.
See, I never consider that when I walk into these these previews, is that homecoming does have an effect on players. And now that you say that, that might bring my disparity down a little bit between these two teams, but I think Poplar Bluff, they're coming off of 2 hard losses against Cape and Jackson, but those are going to be 2 of the best teams that they play all year. So I don't know. I still think Poplar Bluff's going to win this game, but you're right. Sykeston might hold in there a little bit better than I'm thinking. Just because they're a little bit down right now. Yeah. Are they a 3-2 team currently, or are they a 2-3 team?
I believe they're 2-3.
Which they kind of show that. So, yeah, I don't point totals. I'm going to say it's probably going to be a 14-point game.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you ask the fans in Sykes and some of the older fans in Sykes and hate Poplar Bluff. I mean, it's a bigger rival for them almost as much as Cape Central. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's that much for the kids. I don't know if the rivalry down there with the kids is, but homecoming, I think typically they get fired up because you're going to have a big crowd and a big crowd that's supporting you. So you come out of that, you run through that bulldog and you're excited. You kind of come out so I think Sykeston plays with them. But like you said, I think it's about a 2-touchdown game.
Moving on, Malden at Portageville.
This is a get right game for Portageville. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is. Look, you've not played well the last 2 weeks. You just need to go out there and take care of your business. And I think Portageville comes out angry and wins this game. Yeah,
this is a sucky situation for Malden because Portageville's going to be playing some pissed off football, I think, just because they're coming back home. 2 losses on your season against a very offensively smash mouth team. I mean, they're going to be bringing it, and Malden walking into that. You're going to have to come to play because Portageville's not going to take it easy on you.
Yeah, no. This is a situation where Portageville just, and they play well at home. You were saying it earlier. They play well at home. They're not so much on the road apparently, but they do play well at home. And Portageville, man, I'm assuming they're going to come out angry. It's going to be a tough week of practice, I think, for them. I don't think their coaching staff was very happy with the loss to Charleston. So I think they're going to come out and make a statement against Malden.
Moving on, New Madrid County Central at Kennett.
I think New Madrid rolls in this game. I think they've found some success. I think Kennett struggles to score as it is. I think New Madrid played really well defensively. Even though, they gave up 14 points, but only one offensive touchdown, and that was late in the game. The first score for Kelly was a fumble. New Madrid had the ball on the half-yard line, fumbled in the end zone, and Kelly recovered. So their defense played really, really well, and I think that continues this week. I think New Madrid kind of takes care of business down there at Kennett and puts it on them, and I kind of think they're starting to build some momentum here.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's for New Madrid, they've got that taste of victory. They're not going to let it go now, and Kennett's in that same situation that Malden's in, where it's like, hey, you're a hard up team. Don't want to call you easy prey, but that's how New Madrid's looking at you right now.
Yeah. And again, Kennett's got to get some people healthy and find some offense. And I don't know if they can score enough to beat New Madrid.
Moving on, Confluence Prep at Chaffee.
Chaffee's playing better. I just don't know if they're playing well enough to beat Confluence Prep. I mean, Confluence Prep, they're not a great football team, but they're pretty solid. I think they're better than Principia. But I do think that if the weather's better, it'll help Chaffee a little bit. They'll be able to throw the ball a little bit more. I know that their offense throws it a lot more this year than they did last year. So I think that the weather might help Chaffee out a little bit, but I'm still going to take Confluence Prep in this game.
See, I don't know. I've only seen Confluence play Portageville, and Portageville just dismantled them. So I'm going to leave that one up in the air. If Chaffee does win that one, I'll be happy for him. Like you said,
you got to make a pick.
Yeah.
Got him. People want to pick.
I'm going to take Chaffee because I believe in them.
There you go.
Moving on to a game I honestly have no idea about. East Prairie at TDW Prep Academy. They're a team from St. Louis. When I looked on their max preps, it said they won against varsity opponent. So
yeah, I think it's a homeschool group, so you never know what you're going to get from there. And I'm going to assume East Prairie is not going to schedule them if they are really good. So I'm going to assume that East Prairie is going to roll them. I could be way wrong. I don't know. They could come down with a bunch of future NFL guys, but I don't know. I'm going to say East Prairie wins this game, and because I don't think they would schedule them if they thought that they were going to be really, really good.
Yeah, like I said, it's like, and like you said, it's just like I have no idea what this school is. I have no information on them.
Yeah, I could not find any information on them. I mean, who knows? It's like, what was it? A few years ago, the team that played on all these ESPN games, and they were just they were terrible and it was just a made up school, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be this. I have no idea, but East Prairie found them somehow and got them scheduled. But again, if I'm East Prairie, I'm not scheduling a team I don't know much about unless I know that they're not very good, because you don't know what you're getting into. So I'm going to assume East Prairie knows what they're doing here and that they get a win.
Yeah, I'm going to take East Prairie with a final score of question mark to question mark. Moving on, Crothersville at Scott City.
This is a tough one. I think this is going to be a really good game. It's at Scott City, so I'm going to take Scott City by a touchdown. I'm going to say that, we've been talking, they're my 4 and 5. I think this is going to be a good football game. It would not shock me to see either team win this game, but being at Scott City, I'm going to think, they're not going to, come out and play a dud game like they did against Hayti. I think they're going to come out, and I think they win a close one by about a touchdown or so.
So I'm going to take Crothersville, not because I don't believe in Scott City, but because I believe that Crothersville is probably just going to be bringing this loss against Valley into this game, learning from their mistakes, playing in some good weather, hopefully, and, trying to let their athleticism kind of tell its own story. Scott City is a good football team when they really want to be. There are times like against Hayti where it's just like, I don't know what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah. Scott City, this is a big game for both teams for district seeding, a big, big game. There's a lot. I feel like there's a lot on the line in this game. And I don't know, just Scott City playing at home, Crothersville on the road again after a tough game. I don't know. I think, I just I don't know. For some reason, my gut's telling me Scott City in this one,
and that's fair. Like I said,
but Crothersville could win this game. They could blow them out. I would not. It would not shock me.
I think with Scott City, it's like I said, it's what kind of team has shown up today. Their players can absolutely do it. Underwood, when he runs the ball and he runs the ball against teams that let him run the ball, he does phenomenal. Is Crothersville going to be that team to him though? I don't think so. But then you're kind of relying on Jackson Gloff to air the ball out, and he can do that. Absolutely can do that. He did it against Portageville. I'm sure he did it against Malden a little bit if he could throw in that game. I don't know. That's one of those things where it's like I said, Scott City could come out, they could win this game. But if they win this game, it's going to be close. It's going to be probably a touchdown.
Yeah. The key is for Scott City, you've got to shut down Sammy Bryant. Jermonte Alexander is going to make it tough to throw. I think he's got like 5 interceptions or something this year. He's a ball hawk. He's a very good player.
He's so fast.
Yeah. So you're going to throw on the other side of the field that he's on. But yeah, I think it's going to be can Scott City stop Sammy Bryant? Basically, can their offensive and defensive lines control the game? If they can, then Scott City wins this game, and I think they can. I really like what I've seen from their offensive line. The problem is, once Crothersville gets to the edges, can you catch them? Because they're so fast, and you've got to keep them from getting to those edges, and that's going to be the key.
Moving on, Charleston at Hayti.
Man, this is another one that's kind of a toss-up. I don't know. Again, I'm gonna go the home team, Hayti. It wouldn't shock me for Charleston to win this game. I think they're pretty evenly matched. I think it's going to be a good football game. Hayti, they got both teams have a lot of speed. They're well coached and they're playing hard right now. I don't know. I'm gonna go Hayti just because they're playing at home.
I'm gonna take Hayti too, but these two teams are so similar in mindset. They both treat every game each week like it's the most important game on the schedule.
Yeah, and that's what you have to do.
Totally.
And again, they're both. I like what the coaches have done with both teams. Hayti, I think Hayti is a little bit younger, but man, both of them so athletic. I don't know. Man, that's a tough one. I'm gonna stick with my pick with Hayti. I'm sitting here trying to talk myself out of it, but I'm gonna go with Hayti just because they're playing at home.
I'm gonna take Hayti too. But if Charleston wins this game, they can hold that over me because they've surprised me and keep surprising me. I'd love to see it. Moving on to the A-Corp game of the week. I'm so excited for this one. Jackson at Cape Central. We've been waiting for this one since the season started. I know Cape Central's been waiting for this game since the season started, and it's finally here.
Yeah, we've been talking about this one for 5 or 6 episodes now. It's the game that will decide the 1 and 2 in our power rankings. I think probably for the rest of the year. Jackson just seems to have owned Cape Central in the last decade. It seems like it's just they just something in this game brings out the best in Jackson. I look at the two teams and I feel like Cape Central is a better team by sight. You always have that thought in your head of, well, this happened. We thought it before, and then Jackson's went in and blown out Cape Central. But I'm going to go Cape Central. I think this is a year that Coach Gibbs and that team, I think they want it so bad. And their defense is playing so well. I just don't think that Jackson will be able to score enough to win this game, because I think Cape Central is going to score. They're going to be able to run on Jackson. I think they're going to be able to score. Jackson has to make this make Cape Central throw the football. And I don't know if they can do that. So I'm going to take Cape Central.
It's funny to see the perspective of people around us at the start of the season, because when I said Cape Central was my pick for this game, even that far back, people were just like, are you kidding me? It's like, that's just not how this game goes. And it might not.
I was one of those. Beginning of the year, I'm like, no, Jackson. Even though they're losing, it's Jackson. It's Jackson. But the more I've watched these games, and maybe I'm just getting some glassy eyes here, not seeing what I should be seeing. I mean, history tells me take Jackson. History always tells me take Jackson in this game. But I don't know. This Cape Central team is just different, and it just feels different. I said the same thing last week with Dexter. I'm like, a lot of times a hyped up Dexter team doesn't always fulfill the promise. And then I'm like, this team feels different. So that's why I took Dexter last week in Southern Boone. I'm going the same thing this weekend with Cape Central. There's something tells me that this is a team that's just a little bit different than those past Cape Central teams. I think, and so I'm going to stick with them.
So for me, I hate to draw my conclusions from what I saw at the beginning of the season, because obviously as you move further in, like anything you see in preseason doesn't matter. But when we interviewed the players from Cape Central, they looked ready to start with. Their program looks like they've built excellence out of it. And this is like, Coach Gibbs, like he said it in his interview, that because we asked everybody, we're like, hey, what game are you looking forward to most on the season? All the players, of course, said Jackson, always Jackson. Coach Gibbs said, I don't care. He said, every game's the most important one. The next game's the most important one. So I think from his mindset, he has built a complete team in that of just like, we didn't build this team to beat Jackson. We built this team to beat everybody.
Right.
And right now it shows. They look like probably the most complete team I've seen across the board.
And Coach Gibbs can say that, and I'm sure that in his mind he wants to believe that. But don't think when those coaches get in the room and they're talking at the beginning of the season, and they're talking after week 1, and they're talking after week 2, and they're after week 3, that they're not talking about Jackson. I know a basketball coach from Sykeston who will talk about another team, Cape Central, from day one. I mean, yeah, every game is important, but the team that you have to beat, and you will bring them up when things go wrong. Well, you think you're going to be able to beat so-and-so if you're playing like that? And he knows, and Coach Gibbs knows, and these coaches know that that's the game that those players also know that's the game that they have circled. You use that, and so this game means a little bit more. You can say it's just another game. It's not. This game means a little bit more, and I think it means more to the Cape Central players than it does to the Jackson. Jackson's owned this rivalry lately. I don't think it's as much of a rivalry to them as it is Cape Central. I mean, it is, but not. When push comes to shove, I think it's more for Cape Central. They want this game more, and they're going to come out fired up, and you're going to have a blast covering this game on Friday night.
Phrase I kept hearing from the Cape Central players when talking about this game was get or give back. They thought they should have won that game last year.
Yeah.
So they're definitely going to come into this game trying to win it as hard as they can.
Yeah, and it's I tell you what, it's a fired up football team is fun to watch, and I don't think you're going to find a more fired up football team than you're going to see when Cape Central runs out of that tunnel. And I just think that they're going to have the edge, and Jackson better strap it on. But Jackson's played some tough teams. This is not the first tough team that they've seen this year. They've not fared well against a couple of those tough teams. But this one would make it all right with their fans if they could beat Cape Central, because the Jackson fans know that Cape Central is coming for them, and they know all the hype that Cape Central has been getting from us and everybody else in the media. Everybody's been hyping up this Cape Central team, talking about how good their defense is. This Jackson offense is going to want to try to score as many points as they can on them. It's a rivalry, and you got to love these rivalry games, and it's going to be a fun watch. I would hope that stadium at Cape Central is packed. Very seldom is it packed. It's just a big stadium. Hopefully it is packed. I expect it to be.
I expect it to be a raucous environment. You can catch that game on A-Corp Sports Friday at 6:45. God willing, all the terrible weather has passed us by.
Let's hope it looks like it's going to be pretty weather.
So, any final thoughts for this week?
No, just I think this is you got a couple of good games this week. I think, but I think we're having one or two games. We kind of talked a few weeks ago. Well, we're not really having many close games. It seems like we're having a couple close games every week that are kind of standing out, and the teams have definitely separated themselves between those that we know are going to have a chance to make a district run and those that probably aren't. But there's still a lot of good football games that's going to come this week, and I always enjoy the games too that kind of slide in there that are good games that maybe you weren't expecting, or the upsets. Like who would have thought Charleston would have beat Porterville? I really didn't see that coming, but they played really well, and they deserved that win to play, and it was a fun game to watch. So yeah, I enjoy this schedule coming up this week with the Cape Central Jackson game. That's just we've been talking about it all year, and it's finally here. It's going to be a fun game to watch.
Credit to your point. I mean, I say this as more of I don't want to say a casual football fan, but just casual for the area football fan of just I'm from Dexter. I went to Dexter, so my allegiance to that is, I guess, apparent, but at the same time, I'm very excited for district play. I don't really have a huge commitment to any one team in the area. It's I watch all their games because I'm from there. So when we get into district play and it's all these games are going to have to be more competitive, that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah, and teams are kind of building up toward that district, and you're starting to get some jockeying for some seeds. Like we talked about the Scott City Crowsville, that you're kind of jockeying for a seed there. You're that's an important game. You want to win that game. You don't want to lose that game because that's going to hurt your district seed. So, I mean, a lot of these games, you want to, like the Porterville Charleston game, that was a game that hurt Porterville. Porterville was atop that Class II District 1, and now they've dropped. So, these games are all important, and so as we get closer and closer, the games just get more and more meaningful.
Exactly. I think further into the season, especially, we're going to get some more rivalry games. One to pin down just for me is that Charleston East Prairie game. I think that's going to be very competitive this year. So when I say I'm looking forward to district play, of course I am, but I'm also looking forward to games like that. Like you said before, Jackson, Cape Central, any rivalry game that you can circle on a map and be like, that's going to be a good one. Those teams don't like each other. That's something to look forward to.
Yeah. So speaking of that, circle the Caruthersville Hayti game on your schedule.
Oh, absolutely.
The Battle of the Boot Hill. Let's talk about teams and fans that don't like each other. That's a game. If you've never been to one of that game, that's a game that you go down there for. That's it's definitely intense down there when you have those games.
All right. Well, if that covers the rest of the week, we thank you for tuning into the SEMO Sports Zone, and we will see you next week.